What's up, everyone? Welcome to Rex Engine. Happy Halloween. It's objectively the best holiday. And in honor of the best holiday, there's a brand new Rex Engine update that's out today. It's version 1.57, and it's got some really cool new enemy AI behaviors in it. So I wanted to walk you guys through how to set up a classic Mario Bros. Style Boo ghost enemy using some of those new AI features. So this is what this is going to look like when we've finished the project. We've got this ghost. We can see he doesn't do anything. He gets all shy and just stands there in one place when we're looking at him. And when we turn away, he starts to chase us. And all of this is using one of the new AI features, which is called the target facing event. And that's what's going to handle the heavy lifting on making it so that if you're facing a certain enemy, it'll do one thing, and if you're facing away from it, it can do other things. So let's get started making this guy. I'm just going to disable this example we have here, and let's make a new enemy from scratch. So I'm going to use the Rex palette to do that, which you can find under Window, Rex Engine, Rex palette if you don't have it. And just going to hit the From Template Enemy button right there. That's going to give us this blank enemy built from the enemy template right here. So let's zoom in on this guy and let's get to work. So the very first thing that I want to do here is he's got the default enemy graphics, and I'm just going to get rid of those. I'm going to remove his animator controller, and I'm going to find his sprite where he's got this Triceratops sprite right now. And I'm going to find where I put these ghost sprites. There we go. So I'm going to make his default sprite this guy right here. And on the animator, I'm not going to go through the process of setting up the new animations for this because I did that before the video, but that's just the same way as you would set up any other animations in Unity. But I am going to drag the ghost animator controller onto his animator. There we go. And you can see we're missing a tears sprite, which I believe is a child sprite that I set up just to give it a little bit of extra flavor. So when he's looking shy, you can see the tears popping out of his face. I think that was a child's of his sprite. There we go. And this actually doesn't need anything by default. This is fine. Okay, so that's out of the way. Pretty standard, just setting up sprites, basically. So let's see what this gives us out of the box. We've got this blank enemy, and I think he's just going to walk around on the floor until he walks off the stage like an idiot. Okay. So let's open up his controller. Let's slot in a couple of his animations really quick. I'm just going to slot in some of these animations I made for the ghost. Let's go to his moving state. I'm going to slot in the ghost's animation for that. I'm just going to get rid of the knockback state because this enemy, he can take damage, but he doesn't need to actually physically be knocked back when he gets hit. I'm going to make him move a little bit slower, just so he's not chasing us at like really high speed. I'm going to hit can move vertically, just to enable this guy to move up and down in the air as well. And on that note, I'm going to go into his Rex physics on the root game object, and I'm going to disable uses gravity. So that'll make it so he can fly, essentially. Let's change his hitbox size so this matches the sprite better. Let's say 2 by... Yeah, that'll work. I'm going to change that on the root hitbox and on his controller hitbox. Okay, so we got this guy. He shouldn't fall anymore. He should just be Oh, he's still falling. Okay. What have we done? So we have this will snap to floor on start option on the physics. Let's turn that off and see what happens. There we go. Okay, so this guy's floating in the sky. This guy is actually looking kind of the way we want him to, except the next thing we need is for him to follow the player. So let's open up his AI object right here. He's got this AI routine, and if we look inside there at the moment, under movements, he's got a patrol movement right now. And this is set to basically make him move back and forth. So he's not going to care about the player yet. So I'm going to delete this patrol movement. I'm just going to delete the game object. I'm going to click on the AI routine object, and I'm going to click add movement here. And from the drop-down menu, I'm going to pick follow target. So that gives us this brand new follow target object. I'm going to click on that. And the target is set to target type player. We could also do the name of an object, or we could slot in a transform, but player is the easy target. I'm going to uncheck the jump options because he's flying, so he definitely doesn't need to jump. And now this guy should follow the player around. There we go. So we're actually already a lot of the way there. But we want that classic Super Mario Bros. Boo style behavior. We want this guy to get really shy when we stare at him. So all of this is going to be handled under the AI, under the Rex AI. So the first thing is I'm going to add an event. So I'm going to click on the AI routine object, and then I'm going to click on the add event button in the inspector. And from the drop-down, I want to choose target facing. So the events, as a quick refresher, events are basically to allow the AI to respond to an external event. So in this case, we want this ghost to be able to respond to whether or not the player is looking at it. So we've got this target facing event. If I click on that, target type is set to player, but there are plenty of other options here. You can also slot in another Rex controller. And we want the player to be facing towards this to trigger this event. So when the player is facing towards this, underneath this in the do column, in this box here, we can slot in some actions. So what do we want to happen when the player faces towards it? So I'm actually going to say, by default, this is set to toggle sequence. So let's run with that. Let's have it play a sequence of actions when the player is facing it. So I'm going to click on the AI routine again, and let's add a sequence now. Click on add sequence. That's going to give us this basically blank sequence here. And I'm just going to rename this transition to shy. So this is going to be set up. So again, this activates when the player is facing this enemy. He's going to play this transition to shy sequence. Loop type, we never want this to loop. It only has to play once. So under the first action here, I'm going to click edit action, change action type. And there's a couple things we want to happen here. The first thing is we want him to stop moving, right? So he's not going to chase the player anymore if the player is facing it. So I'm going to click on change movement. And under change type, I want it to be set mode to wait. So we're not actually giving him like a new movement routine. We're basically just pausing his existing routine. So normally he's chasing the player, but we're setting that from active mode to wait mode. Let's add an action then to change the animation so he also plays his shy animation. So I'm going to click on play animation. I'm actually going to shift this up so he plays the animation first. Play new animation, and let's slot in, we have an animation here that's for transitioning to shy. So I'm just going to slot in the animation that I want to play. And let me add one more action in the middle here to make it so he waits. Well, Actually, let me not do that. Let me not have a wait. He should play the animation, and he should just stop moving immediately when the player faces him. So we made this little sequence here, this transition to shy sequence. And now I'm going to click on the target facing event that we made. And we have a slot here for the sequence that's going to play when the player faces it. And I'm just going to drag and drop the transition to shy sequence into the sequence slot right there. So let's move this guy to the left of the player, just so the player doesn't start out facing it, so we can see if this is working when the player turns around to face it. Okay, so something isn't working. What are we doing? Now, before we test, there's one more important thing we have to do. And that's we have to click on the root AI routine. If we look at sequences here, there's a starting sequence, which by default, when we added this transition to shy sequence, it set that to be the starting sequence. We don't want this to happen immediately. We only want this to happen when the player faces this enemy. So I'm just going to click on that and set that to none to make sure the sequence isn't playing until this event triggers. Okay, so let's hit play now and test this. And we can see this guy is chasing the player as long as the player is facing away. But if we turn towards him, then he stops moving. So that's good. This is part of the behavior we want. But we also want him to start chasing the player again if the player faces away. And we also want him to play his shy animation. So actually, let's get him to play that shy animation first. Let's click on the transition to shy sequence. And okay, so he's playing his transition. He's setting the mode to wait. Let's add an action here. And I'm going to add a play animation action again. And I'm just going to slot in the shy animation here. So this is his animation where he's all bashful. And let's add a wait action above this, so that he's going to play the transition animation, stop moving, and then wait for, let's say, 0.1 seconds, and then play the shy animation. And under the shy animation, I'm going to make this loop forever. So rather than just playing through once and stopping, he's going to play the shy animation over and over again until something else tells him to stop. There we go. And also, he's got this little tears animation. I'm just going to move that up really quickly, just so it's in the right spot, so it looks nice. Let's test that real quick. Perfect. Okay, so everything is working properly when he faces the enemy now. So now we want him to start chasing the player again when you face away from it. So I'm going to add a second event. I'm going to click on AI routine, add event. Let's add another target facing event. I'm going to name this one target facing away, just for organization. And this is basically going to be the same event as the target facing event, except rather than it requiring you facing towards the enemy, I'm going to click on away from this. And just like before, let's add a new sequence to trigger when this event happens. So I'm going to click on add sequence. I'm going to unslot this really quickly so it's not playing this from the start. And this new sequence I'm going to call chase sequence. So this one is basically going to be the opposite of the other sequence. So in this case, let's change action type to change movement. And rather than setting mode to wait, let's set the mode to active. So this is going to resume his follow the player movement. Let's add a play animation action to give him back his chasing animation. Slot that in there. Set it so it loops forever. Let's put that transitionary animation up top. Shift the transition up. And add a wait action between the two animations so they don't overlap. Okay, so if we look across the sequence here, we've got, so he's setting his movement to active, he's playing a transition animation, waiting 0.1 seconds, and then playing his regular animation. So there's one more thing we need to do first. We've got these two events. We have one that happens when the player is facing away from this enemy, and one that happens when he's facing towards it. But we don't want both of these events to be firing at the same time. So what we want to happen is when the player faces the enemy, we want that to then turn on the event where it checks to see if the player is facing away. And vice versa, if the player faces away, we want that to turn on the event to check for if the player is facing. So in the target facing event, I'm going to click on Add Action. And I'm going to click on Action Options, Change Action Type to Toggle Event. So the target facing event is going to turn on the target facing away. I'm going to slot the away into this. And on the target facing away, I'm going to add toggle event, and that's going to add the target facing. So this is the player facing away. Let's slot in the chase sequence. There we go. And that's all there is to it. If any of that didn't make sense, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'll definitely try and help you guys out. But hopefully that was a pretty straightforward, intermediate-ish enemy AI tutorial. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will talk to you guys soon.